Crouched on his hands and knees, Ronnie Jackson was deep into the tedious task of laying 4 by 4-inch ceramic tiles across a 10 by 12-foot kitchen floor. Each tile had to be meticulously placed, with adhesive carefully applied before pressing it into position. As he set another piece in line with the previous one, he gave a small, satisfied nod. A minor misalignment, just a couple of millimeters, could throw off the whole layout, and since Eccles' renovation and remodeling guaranteed perfect results, Ronnie made sure every tile was precisely positioned before moving forward. Just as he reached the end of the row, his phone rang. It was his wife, Charlotte, calling the company line. He answered. "Ronnie, it's me," she said, her tone clipped and impatient. "Yeah," he muttered, already reaching for another tile to keep working. There had been a time when she greeted him with warmth, maybe even a playful, "Hey, honey," but those days felt like a distant memory. "When are you going to be done?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation. Ronnie glanced at his progress. He had covered nearly 8 feet of the floor so far. "I'm at Pritchard's place," he said. "I'd say another 3 hours, give or take." "Fine," Charlotte snapped, then hung up without another word. Ronnie sighed. He felt the urge to rush through the rest of the job, but experience told him that cutting corners would only lead to problems. So he forced himself to stay focused, carefully placing each tile while his mind drifted elsewhere, specifically to the woman he had been married to for almost 22 years. He first met Charlotte Eccles on his second day working for her father's company. She had walked into John Eccles' office, nervously explaining why she hadn't performed well in high school. She was a chubby brunette with thick, wavy hair and a face dotted with acne. Ronnie barely spared her a glance before returning his attention to the tools he was organizing in the company shed. "That's my daughter," John Eccles growled, narrowing his eyes at Ronnie. "You hear me? My daughter?" "Yes, sir," Ronnie replied, resisting the urge to shrug. It didn't take long for Charlotte to pick up on her father's disapproval. Maybe that's why she made a habit of flashing Ronnie flirtatious smiles and greeting him every time they crossed paths. He always responded politely, but never encouraged her advances. "I warned you," John barked one afternoon. "Leave my daughter alone, got it?" "I'm not chasing after her," Ronnie said honestly. At 21, he saw 17-year-old Charlotte as nothing more than a pesky teenager. She was overweight, awkward, and constantly fidgeting. To him, she was just an annoyance. One evening, as Ronnie and another worker unloaded supplies after a long day, Charlotte approached him. "Hey, Ronnie," she purred. "Yeah," he grunted, struggling to open a bag of quick-dry cement. "I turn 18 this Saturday," she announced, leaning forward slightly. "Good for you," Ronnie said flatly. "Happy birthday." His co-worker smirked. Charlotte wasn't deterred. "So what are you getting me for my birthday?" she asked, her voice teasing. Ronnie sighed. "Close your eyes," he said. She did. "What do you see?" he asked, hoisting the cement bag into the truck. Nothing?" she said hesitantly. "Exactly, that's my gift. Happy birthday," he said before walking away. But Charlotte's mother, Lois Eccles, had other plans. She insisted that Ronnie be invited to Charlotte's birthday party and made sure her husband extended the invitation. Feeling obligated, Ronnie bought a card from a local pharmacy and picked up a silver bracelet from a pawn shop for $20. Lois also managed to rope him into taking Charlotte to prom. He begrudgingly agreed, cringing when he saw her in a tight sleeveless dress. Still, he was polite. He posed for photos, danced with her, and even kissed her goodnight before taking her home. A few days later, John Eccles confronted him again. "She's heartbroken because you didn't call her," John growled. Ronnie bit back his frustration. He didn't want to get involved, but he called Charlotte anyway and asked her out. One date turned into another. By the 5th, she gave him her pureness. 5 months after they got married, Tracy Lois Jackson was born. And for the next decade, Ronnie found himself stuck with the hardest, most grueling jobs at Eccles renovation and remodeling. He was convinced that John Eccles deliberately sought out the most backbreaking projects just so he could dump them on his son-in-law. For the first 16 years of their marriage, Charlotte had been a decent wife. She made an effort to understand Ronnie's preferences, learned to cook his favorite meals, and even kept quiet during Broncos games on Sundays. She struggled with her weight, shedding pounds only to gain them back, sometimes more than before. Her acne improved slightly, but the scars never fully faded, though makeup helped. When their daughter Tracy started school, Charlotte took a job at the Garland County Public Library. The salary was meager, but the benefits, health and dental insurance, were worth it. Then, shortly after their 16th anniversary, Charlotte's cousin Darlene moved back to Dolan's, Utah, dragging along yet another husband, either her third or fourth. Darlene was loud, crass, and always stirring up trouble. Her husband, Gary, wasn't any better, an obnoxious Dallas Cowboys fan, of all things. Unfortunately, Charlotte quickly adopted her cousin's abrasive attitude. She became more outspoken, more critical, and less attentive to her home life. Cooking became a rarity, house chores were neglected, and most evenings, she was out with Darlene and Gary instead of home. Ronnie didn't mind cooking for himself. He knew his way around the kitchen, and he didn't complain about washing a few dishes. But what started as an occasional break from household duties soon became the norm. Even Tracy learned to clean, cook, and sew buttons back onto her school uniform. Yet somehow she seemed to blame Ronnie for her mother's absence rather than Charlotte herself. Back in Pritchard's kitchen, Ronnie checked the time. 3 hours had passed since Charlotte's call. With the last tile laid at the threshold between the kitchen and living room, he slowly straightened up, groaning as his stiff joints protested. "Man, I'm getting too old for this," he muttered, gathering his tools and the few extra tiles left over. After finishing up at the Pritchard house, Ronnie pulled out his phone and dialed John Eccles. Even now, after all these years, the sound of John's garbled speech made Ronnie wince. The man had been larger than life before the stroke nearly took him down, and his recovery had been painfully slow. The health crisis had come on suddenly, just minutes after his wife Lois revealed she had chest cancer. Despite enduring a double mastectomy and radiation therapy, Lois had still taken on the burden of caring for her husband while fighting for her own life. John and Lois's sons, Dennis, Brian, and Paul, did their best to help where they could. Ronnie pitched in whenever necessary, and Charlotte, the only daughter, had been her mother's constant support. It was Charlotte who drove Lois to her appointments at Fairway Hospital, holding her hand through the worst of the pain. In the end, the battle was too much. Lois lost. And when she did, John Eccles seemed to lose his will to live along with her. But for whatever reason, end didn't come for him. Instead, day after day, he was wheeled into the company office on a gurney, as if sheer routine might keep him tethered to the world. Every afternoon, he sat at his desk, cursing his uncooperative left hand as he struggled to type on his keyboard. When the day ended, one of his sons would drive him home. "Yes, sir, I just wrapped up Pritchard's job. It's done," Ronnie said into the phone, listening as John grunted and wheezed in response. When Ronnie got home, the smell of dinner hit him immediately. Pork chops, mashed potatoes, and French-cut green beans. One of his favorites. He inhaled deeply, savoring it. After John's stroke, Charlotte had forced the family onto a strict heart-healthy diet, which had helped her drop 40 pounds, though she still carried more weight than she wanted. Ronnie often joked that their daughter, Tracy, had chosen to attend Brigham Young University just to escape the bland, low-sodium meals. Tracy never denied it. Ronnie leaned in to kiss Charlotte as she moved between the stove and the counter, but she waved him off, wrinkling her nose. He got the message. Stripping off his sweaty clothes, he tossed them in the hamper and headed for the shower. The hot water eased the stiffness in his aching muscles. The work had been grueling when he was 21. Now, at 43, it was wearing him down fast, but Dennis, Brian, and Paul didn't seem to care. With John's ongoing medical bills draining the company's budget, they insisted there was no money for extra help. Wiping the steam from the mirror, Ronnie barely glanced at his reflection. Still broad-shouldered, still strong, but worn down in ways that didn't show on the surface. He pulled on a t-shirt and shorts, then headed downstairs just as Charlotte set his plate in front of his usual seat. "And for dessert, there's hot apple pie," she said, sliding a frosted mug and a can of beer next to his plate. A sick feeling settled in Ronnie's gut. The last time Charlotte had served him a beer in a frosted mug, they'd been sitting at the kitchen table, relaxed. It had been her 35th birthday, a few months before their 17th anniversary. Tracy was out with friends. Ronnie had been savoring the cold drink, content, until Charlotte broke the peace. "Sweetheart, we need to talk," she had said. The words that followed were a slow, meandering build-up to something she didn't quite know how to say. Ronnie had let her ramble for a while before cutting her off with a sigh. "Charlotte, just get to the point. My beer's almost gone." She scowled at him, then took a breath. "Darlene and Gary aren't exclusive." Ronnie frowned. "And they have an open marriage." His grip on the mug tightened. "And have you ever thought about sleeping with other women?" she asked. Of course, Ronnie admitted. I'm a man. I notice people. That girl Shelley at the gas station, for example. Charlotte scoffed. Shelley at the gas station? Yeah, right. Like you'd ever have a shot with her. Ronnie smirked. That's not the point. I think, and then it stops there. But what if it didn't have to stop? She pressed. What if we could have fun with other people and still come home to each other? No guilt, no secrets. I can't, Ronnie said flatly. We're married. We made vows in front of our families, our friends. He drained the last of his beer and stood, carrying his mug to the sink. We promised to be faithful, to forsake all others, including Shelley at the gas station. Charlotte tilted her head. But we could make new vows. No, Ronnie said firmly. The ones we have are good enough. Darlene and Gary might be fine with whatever they're doing, but that's not us. It never will be. But no, end of discussion, he said, walking out of the kitchen. At least he had hoped it was the end. But Charlotte brought it up again, and again. Each time, Ronnie shut her down. But honey, she whined, this would prove how much we love each other. We'd trust each other enough to… Ronnie groaned. Do you even hear how ridiculous you sound? No, Charlotte. If you need me to let you cheat on me just to prove I love you, then maybe I don't. The fourth time she brought it up, Ronnie had had enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Hey, John, how are you? He said casually. Charlotte's face went pale. She knew exactly who he was talking to. But when he followed up with, Can I speak to Lois? Her expression turned to horror. Here, Charlotte, he said, holding the phone out to her. Tell your mom what Darlene's been filling your head with. Charlotte snatched the phone, bolted from her seat. But before she could escape, Ronnie caught her by the shoulder, keeping her in place. Trapped, she stammered out a pathetic, jumbled explanation before abruptly hanging up. When she turned back to Ronnie, her face burned with rage. You son of a witch, she hissed. Ronnie leaned in close. Listen to me, and listen well, he said coldly. Bring this up again, and you won't have a marriage to open. We'll be done. And just like that, it stopped. Charlotte never mentioned it again. Darlene and Gary stopped showing up as often, their influence fading. Ronnie had won. Ask Darlene to make you some, Ronnie said, rinsing out his cup. 5 years had passed since Charlotte last brought up the idea of an open marriage, and now, as Ronnie sat at the dinner table, he watched her pour him a beer. The foam threatened to spill over. Charlotte had never quite mastered the art of pouring. You know, I turn 40 next Tuesday, she said, as Ronnie cut into his pork chop. I know, he replied, chewing. And when we met, I was a maiden, she continued. Ronnie raised an eyebrow. Not sure what that has to do with your birthday, but all right. You're turning 40, and you were a maiden. Charlotte let out an exaggerated sigh. What I mean is, I've only ever been with one man. Just you. Well, lucky you, that man was me, Ronnie said, spearing a forkful of green beans. Did you cook these with bacon? They're pretty good. But you, she pressed. You had, what, 10 women before me, maybe more? Ronnie took a sip of his beer. Life's not always fair. Charlotte leaned forward. So I've been thinking, I've spent my whole life taking care of you, raising Tracy, looking after my parents. And now that I'm hitting the big 4, 0, I deserve a little fun, a break. Ronnie slowed his chewing. A break? Darlene and I are going to Las Vegas next week, she announced. She found a great deal at one of the casinos. Ronnie took his time swallowing his bite. He picked up his beer, took another sip, then wiped his mouth with his napkin. And while we're there, Charlotte continued, her voice a little too casual, we might, go out, meet a couple of guys, just for a date, not necessarily anything serious. Just a little harmless fun so I can see what it's like to talk to someone new, so I can appreciate what I have at home even more. Ronnie tapped his fork against his plate. This sauce is almost perfect. Ronnie, I'm serious, Charlotte snapped. So am I, he said, still focused on his meal. This is about me, she insisted. I want to experience life, to spread my wings. You mean cheat on me? Ronnie asked. Charlotte stiffened. Listen, I've already made my decision. Either you accept it or we get a divorce. Ronnie leaned back in his chair. Okay, I'll file for divorce. He set his fork down and glanced at the dessert on the counter. Do we have any ice cream to go with this pie? Charlotte blinked. Wait, what? Divorce is expensive, Ronnie, she protested. You can't be serious. He shrugged. What's there to talk about? You just sat here and told me you made up your mind. You and your delightful cousin are heading to Vegas. You don't care about our bills, our responsibilities. You're going because it's your big four. Zero. You're a married woman planning to go on dates with other men, and you're telling me I either have to be okay with it or end our marriage? Fine, we're ending it. Now about that pie. Does it come with ice cream? But it's just for a week, Charlotte argued. 1 week, 1 night, 1 hour. It doesn't matter, Ronnie said, pushing his plate away. Cheating is cheating, and I refuse to be married to a cheater, so no damn ice cream. You could take Darlene, Charlotte suggested weakly. Ronnie burst into laughter. Oh, God, no, that's the worst idea you've ever had. I wouldn't touch Darlene if she were the last woman on earth. He cut into the pie, took a bite, then immediately grimaced. Oh, fantastic. You used that artificial sweetener again, didn't you? He pushed the plate away, stood up, wiped his mouth, and walked out of the kitchen. Don't worry. Tomorrow, I'll meet with a lawyer and get the divorce started, he called over his shoulder as he headed upstairs. Charlotte gasped. But, Ronnie, you don't listen, he suddenly shouted from the stairwell, turning back. Of course I listen, she yelled. Ronnie stormed back down. No, you don't. I told you what would happen if you ever brought this up again. And here we are. So, we're getting a divorce. He marched into the third bedroom, which served as their home office, and turned on the old desktop computer. The thing was ancient, 7 years outdated, but still connected to the internet. He typed in a quick search for local divorce attorneys. Penny Barnes, family law, free consultation. Perfect. He clicked the link and filled out the online form. A moment later, his phone buzzed with a confirmation. Appointment scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Charlotte busied herself in the kitchen, muttering angrily as she cleaned up. Later, when she came upstairs, she undressed and slid into bed, without clothes. Ronnie wasn't surprised when she pressed herself against him. No thanks, he said, rolling over. Good night. Ronnie woke at his usual time, 5:30 a.m. Even on his days off, his body was stuck in its routine. He slipped out of bed quietly, not bothering to look back at Charlotte, and closed the bedroom door behind him. Downstairs, he brewed a pot of coffee and checked his emails. Penny Barnes's office had sent a list of documents he needed to bring. By 7 o'clock, he debated making himself a second cup when he heard Charlotte stomping around upstairs. He decided against making her one. If she wanted coffee, she could brew it herself. Then he heard her voice. No, I told him. He has to let me. She was whispering into her phone as she descended the stairs. Then she spotted him. She jumped and gasped. Ronnie, what are you doing here? He sipped his coffee. Like I told you last night, Dennis doesn't have clearance to start the federal savings and loan rebuild yet, so I've got nothing to do today. Charlotte pressed her lips together. And right now, he added, the grass is too wet to mow, so I'm just reading the news. Did you know Burns & Burns is thinking of opening a second store? Right there in Pulaski, Charlotte huffed. You could have at least left me some coffee, Ronnie shrugged. Ask Darlene to make you some? He rinsed out his cup and walked away. Penny Barnes was an attractive brunette, the kind of woman who exuded quiet confidence. Ronnie had a sneaking suspicion her glasses were more of an accessory than a necessity, something to make her appear more authoritative. She skimmed through the financial paperwork, tapping a manicured nail against the page. Looks like you refinanced your mortgage at 3.9% recently? Ronnie nodded. Yeah, my daughter's in her final year of college. My father-in-law racked up a mountain of medical expenses, and my mother-in-law's insurance barely covered anything. The deductibles were insane. Then came funeral costs. And on top of all that, Eccles renovation nearly went under after Paul botched the timing on several project orders. Penny clicked her tongue. Yeah, I see that here. She glanced up, adjusting her glasses. So, Mr. Jackson, divorcing the boss's daughter? How's that going to affect your job? Ronnie chuckled. I think I'll be stepping away from the company. She nodded. Makes sense. On the other hand, Mrs. Jackson's job at the Garland County Public Library shouldn't be affected. By Friday, Dennis still hadn't received the green light for the federal savings and loan rebuild, leaving Ronnie with extra time at home to work on some lingering repairs. That's when Charlotte called. The second he answered, she erupted. What the hell is this? What kind of scam are you pulling? Ah, so you got the paperwork, Ronnie said, his tone casual. Anyway, what's wrong with the downstairs bathroom? You mentioned something needing fixing, but I'm not seeing the problem. The lock is sticking, Charlotte snapped. And you and I need to talk when I get home. You hear me? No, Charlotte. We've talked plenty, but talking doesn't help when you listen to Darlene more than your own husband. So no, we're done talking. Ronnie jiggled the bathroom lock, testing it. Yeah, I see the problem. I'll take care of it. Bye. But I don't want a divorce, Charlotte whined. And I don't want to be married to someone who's got one foot out the door, Ronnie shot back. Anything else? Silence. Then a grudging, no. Great. Goodbye then. He let the next call go to voicemail. But when John's name popped up on the screen, he sighed and answered. Hello. John grumbled, growled, and wheezed, his typical way of speaking since the stroke. Ronnie listened, deciphering a string of slurred expletives. It's simple, sir. Darlene and her husband have an open marriage, and they convinced Charlotte that she should too. She figured she could have her fun on the side while staying married to me, and, well, I told her no. John's response was a mix of sputtered outrage and half-intelligible ranting. Last night, Ronnie continued, your daughter told me I could either accept it or get a divorce, so I'm choosing divorce. John tried to argue, shifting to guilt-tripping tactics. Look, I appreciate the concern, Ronnie said, though he didn't mean it. But you've got 3 sons and a daughter. This is between Charlotte and me. John muttered something else, but Ronnie sighed, already done with the conversation. Besides, why would I want a company that's been drowning in debt for the past 3 years? He muttered under his breath. Charlotte didn't come home alone that evening. As expected, she brought backup Darlene and Gary, her ever-supportive, ever-meddling cheerleaders. Ronnie leaned back in his chair, watching them set up their performance. Look, Ronnie, Gary began, adopting a patronizing tone. Since our marriage isn't threatened by outside connections, Darlene is free to form relationships beyond just me. Darlene nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, it's about trust, you know. We share everything, no secrets. It's actually brought us closer. Charlotte shot Ronnie a hopeful look, as if their nonsense might finally sway him. Ronnie nodded thoughtfully. Oh, well, that certainly explains everything. The trio's faces lit up. Then Ronnie stood up. No! Their expressions fell. But, hey, Charlotte, he added with a grin, after we're divorced, you'll be free to open your heart, your life, and whatever else to anyone you want. Gary smirked. Oh, I see how it is. Just because you feel insecure, you think Charlotte should deny herself new experiences? Ronnie flashed his teeth in a mock-friendly grin. If telling yourself that helps you sleep at night, then by all means, go right ahead. With that, he turned and headed upstairs. That night, Charlotte made one final, desperate attempt to sway him by pressing herself against him in bed. Ronnie didn't even look at her. Get some sleep, Charlotte. You've got a busy day ahead. As always, Ronnie's body woke him at 5:30 a.m. He no longer cared if the noise of his morning routine disturbed Charlotte. She could sleep through it or not. It wasn't his problem. Anymore, Dot. He went downstairs, brewed himself a cup of coffee, and scrolled through the latest news. His usual irritation at the political headlines surfaced. These politicians, I swear, he muttered to himself. Force them to live on Social Security. Make them use the same damn healthcare system they shoved down everyone else's throat. At 11 a.m., a knock sounded at the front door. Gary. Ronnie opened it, immediately blocking Gary's attempt to step inside. Yeah? Ronnie asked. Hey, man, Gary said with forced enthusiasm. I'm here to pick up Charlotte. Take her to the airport. Ronnie didn't move. I'll let her know you're here. He then shut the door in Gary's face and returned to his pre-recorded sitcom. A few minutes later, Charlotte came stomping down the stairs, dragging her suitcase behind her. She shot Ronnie an exasperated look. Why didn't you tell me Gary and Darlene were waiting? Huh? Ronnie finally glanced at her. Oh yeah, they're outside. Charlotte rolled her eyes. God, really? Do you have to act like this? She set her suitcase down and leaned toward him, expecting a kiss. Ronnie leaned away. Her lips met empty air. We'll talk about this when I get back, she huffed. No, we won't, he said, eyes back on the TV. We really won't. Once Charlotte left, Ronnie enjoyed a peaceful afternoon. After a good meal, he tackled some lingering projects, finishing the last of his home improvements by repainting the front door. He went with a pale yellow, something that stood out against the red brick of the house. The fresh color brightened the entryway, making the place feel lighter. From the garage, their cat, Samson, yowled in protest. Ronnie smirked. Relax, buddy. Soon as the door's dry, I'll let you out. For the first time in a long while, Ronnie felt like something in his life was finally being fixed. Back upstairs, Ronnie sat down at the computer and got to work severing financial ties. First, he logged into their shared accounts and canceled every joint credit card. He had no idea if Charlotte had personal cards in her own name, nor did he care. What mattered was that he wasn't about to bankroll her little Vegas escapade or her cousin's reckless spending habits. Next, he withdrew half the funds from Charlotte's personal account. Then, from their joint account, where he had been the only contributor, he withdrew half of that as well. Setting up a new private account in his name was surprisingly easy, and within minutes he had transferred his share of the money there. His next move was cutting his name from the household bills. Most companies made it easy to make changes online. Garland County Power and Light sent a confirmation email stating the cancellation wouldn't take effect until the end of the billing cycle. "I don't give a damn," Ronnie muttered at the screen. As his stomach rumbled, he decided it was time to treat himself. "Sloan's Pizza," he said aloud, grinning. Charlotte had never let him eat there, always nagging about cholesterol and heart disease. Well, maybe he'd drop dead from a heart attack right there in the booth. Worth it. He ordered a large pizza and a cold draft beer. The waitress, though easily 75 pounds overweight, had a warm smile, and Ronnie found himself casually flirting. She laughed and tapped his wedding ring with one of her ridiculously long nails. That killed the mood. He glanced at his left hand, his good mood fading. When he got to his truck, he yanked at the ring for what felt like forever before it finally slipped off. He tossed it into the cup holder, then looked at his bare hand. "Forever, huh, Charlotte?" he muttered. "Guess forever ended today." His truck made a soft, familiar groan. Low fuel. He pulled into a gas station, initially intending to pump just $10 worth, but then shrugged and filled the whole damn tank. 22 gallons takes forever, huh? He muttered to the pump as it gurgled. Inside, he grabbed a six-pack of boudoir beer. As he walked past the freezers, he spotted tubs of ice cream and tossed a pint of strawberry into his basket. Shelley wasn't working the register anymore. She had married and crushed the dreams of half the men who used to swing by just to see her. But Shannon Carlyle, the tiny brunette who had taken her place, was almost as pretty. Ronnie smiled as she hopped up onto the milk crate she kept behind the counter. Once, he had asked how tall she was. She had given him a sharp look and snapped, "I'm 4'8". How short are you?" About 7 inches, he had joked. Her brown eyes had widened, then she burst out laughing. From that day on, she called him Shorty. "Has your wife left town, Shorty?" Shannon asked, ringing up his beer and ice cream. "My wife left for good," Ronnie said. Her dark brown eyes flickered to his bare ring finger. She studied him for a moment, then smirked. "So, sweetheart, where are you taking me on our first date?" she teased, casually running a hand through her thick brown hair. Ronnie chuckled. "Shannon, as pretty as you are, what in the world do you want with an old man like me?" She grinned. About 7 inches." Charlotte had turned 40 on Tuesday. By Wednesday, Tracy called. "Eccles renovation and remodeling," Ronnie answered. "Dad, it was Mom's birthday yesterday," Tracy said, her tone accusatory. Ronnie said, scratching his 3-day stubble. "And? Why didn't you call her?" "Didn't feel like it," he replied. "Dad, that's so immature." "Why?" "You'll find out soon enough," he said. "Your mother decided that turning 40 meant she should start sleeping with other men." There was a pause. Then, "And what?" Ronnie scoffed. "What do you mean? And what? She's a married woman. Married women don't sleep with other men." "Oh my God, Dad, that's so old-fashioned," Tracy giggled. "Goodbye, Tracy." Ronnie hung up. 10 minutes later, Charlotte's number flashed on the screen. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Eccles renovation and remodeling, Ronnie speaking." "Hi, Ronnie." Charlotte's voice was firm, clipped. "Hey, how does it feel to be a 40-year-old cheater?" Ronnie asked. "That's not funny," she snapped. "Didn't think so either," he said evenly. "Oh, and thanks so much for canceling the credit cards," she added, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're welcome," Ronnie said. "Anything else?" "My birthday was yesterday, Ronnie," she said. "Why didn't you call?" "Didn't want to," he sighed. "But hey, maybe one of your new boyfriends gave you a birthday wish." "Oh my God, grow up, Ronnie." "Oh, already? Growing up means honoring commitments, keeping your word. Adults respect their vows, Charlotte." Charlotte exhaled sharply, then changed her approach. "So, Melissa Callick?" "Melissa Callick," Ronnie echoed. "Oh yeah. Used to be Melissa Strom. She was in Tracy's class. Cute blonde. Married that bank manager, Lucas Callick. Anyway, she's in real estate now, and I've got this adorable redhead handling our house listing. Damn, she's as cute as a button. The good news? She's confident she can sell the place fast. Sell! Charlotte shrieked. Ronnie, we are not selling the house. Oh? You really think you can afford to buy me out? Ronnie asked casually. Remember, we still have to pay off the second mortgage, and Melissa says we'll probably have to bring money to the table to get rid of it. We're not selling the house, Charlotte yelled again, and I went ahead and put all your furniture into storage at Easy Warehouse on Independence Road, Ronnie continued smoothly. Unit 212. Your dad has the key. In the background, Ronnie heard Charlotte groan. Oh, Darlene, I need to get home. But since your dad couldn't take the cat, I dropped Samson off at Dennis's place, Ronnie added. Dennis! Charlotte shrieked. My God, he has Dobermans. Ronnie grinned. Huh, you're right. No wonder he was so eager to adopt the cat. Ronnie! Charlotte's screams pierced through the phone, but he was already done with the conversation. He hung up. And just like that, the last tie was cut. Leaving his phone on the kitchen table, Ronnie went upstairs and powered on his laptop. The phone started ringing again, but he ignored it. He muttered to himself as he navigated the internet. Maybe your mom's new boyfriend can cover your tuition, Tracy. Or, better yet, see if there's a scholarship for students with a 2.1 GPA. With that attitude, it's getting harder to justify why I should pay for it. After shutting down the computer, he headed to the bathroom, lathered his face, and shaved off 3 days' worth of stubble. It was rough going, but he managed without nicking himself. A hot shower followed, then a clean pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Downstairs, he grabbed his truck keys, stepped outside, and retrieved his laptop from behind the passenger seat. Then, with deliberate ease, he tossed his phone into the trash bin and rolled it to the curb. I'm going to miss having you around, said his neighbor, Herman Vaugard, standing on his porch across the street. Ronnie smirked. We've barely spoken. The only time we exchanged more than a sentence was when you complained about Tracy's friends blasting their music too loud. Exactly, Herman grumbled. Do you know how rare it is to get neighbors who don't borrow your tools, don't expect you to pet sit, and don't ask you to pick up their mail when they go on vacation? Now I'll probably get some couple who wants to host neighborhood barbecues. Serves you right for being so approachable, Ronnie said. Herman glanced at the trash bin and raised an eyebrow. Your garbage is ringing. Ronnie smirked. Probably a rat. Mind your own business. He shook Herman's hand one last time and walked back inside. Charlotte arrived home to find that her key no longer fit the front door. Frustrated, she whipped out her phone to call Gold Standard Real Estate, but the call wouldn't go through. Darlene, let me see your phone, she snapped. As Charlotte fumed, Gary walked around the house, rattling the windows and testing the back door. No luck. Everything was locked up tight. Finally, Charlotte got through to the agency. Gold Standard Real Estate, this is Melissa Kallick, came a chipper voice. Yes, this is Charlotte Jackson, Charlotte snapped. I'm standing outside my house, and my key doesn't work. Jackson? Oh, Ronald Jackson's ex-wife, Melissa asked, still chipper. Wife, Charlotte corrected. Oh, I'm so glad you called. I actually need you to sign some paperwork. Also, you won't believe this, I have a couple who's really interested in your home. The house is not for sale, Charlotte barked. Oh? So, are you buying out Mr. Jackson's share then? Melissa asked innocently. That's too bad. The Richmonds were very eager. Well, I suppose they could look at the Purcell's listing instead. Charlotte clenched her jaw as Gary returned from his perimeter check. The place is sealed up tight, he reported. Cursing under her breath, Charlotte called Ronnie. When his voicemail picked up, she seethed. You son of a... Beep! She groaned and leaned against the car. Gary sighed. Look, do you want to ride somewhere, or are we going to camp out here all night? Charlotte exhaled sharply. Let's go get my cat. Charlotte called Dennis, the next logical stop. Hey, Dennis, you have Samson? Are you out of your damn mind? Dennis snapped. You think I'd take in that useless cat when I have 3 Dobermans? Papillon, Olive Oil, and Bluto would tear it to pieces? Charlotte's stomach dropped. Then where is he? Dad has him, Dennis grumbled. Better get there fast. His physical therapist is allergic to cats, and you know how Dad gets when someone inconveniences him. Oh, thank God, Charlotte exhaled. And thank you, Charlotte, Dennis added sarcastically. Ronnie's gone, and now we're practically out of business. We finally got clearance for the federal savings and loan job, Except I had to let Fremantle take it because none of us know how to lay tile. Uh-huh, Charlotte mumbled, barely listening as she hung up. Darlene rolled her eyes. How many more people are you going to call? Charlotte shrugged. What? You have unlimited minutes, right? Darlene scoffed. Yeah, except this genius over here wasted most of them on fantasy football. She nudged Gary, who grumbled but didn't argue. Fine. Last call, Charlotte promised. John Eccles picked up and exploded the moment she said hello. By the time he finished ranting, she had no choice but to swallow her pride and ask if she could stay at his house. Reluctantly, John agreed. Gary pulled up to John's house, popped the trunk, and dumped Charlotte's suitcase onto the driveway. Darlene and Charlotte exchanged a quick hug before Charlotte dragged her luggage toward the front door. As Darlene climbed into the front seat, Gary smirked. So, how was it? Darlene sighed, exasperated. What a nightmare. I mean, look at her. Does she really think anyone wants to sleep with her? Gary snorted. Not with you sitting next to her, that's for sure. They watched as Charlotte disappeared inside. But did you at least get any money out of her? Gary asked. Almost, Darlene muttered. If it weren't for Ronnie. God, I hate that guy. Can you believe he canceled all her credit cards? She had to use her debit card the whole time. Gary shrugged. So? There are ATMs everywhere. Darlene groaned. Yeah, well, she's got about $10 left. Gary rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll stop at a gas station. Just get $10, Darlene reminded him. We still got to pay the electric bill, unless you already paid it. Gary nodded, climbed out of the car, and walked into the convenience store. Darlene sighed, resting her forehead against the window. But then, through the glass, she saw Gary stop in front of the beer cooler. Her eyes narrowed. She slammed her palm against the horn. Gary! Gary flinched and turned to glare at her through the window, before casually reaching for a can of beer anyway. When he returned to the car, he held up the single can, looking innocent. I was only going to get one. Darlene rolled her eyes. Yeah, one, until you went back for 6 more. Hey, Gary grinned. Does that tiny chick still work here? The one with the, big assets? Darlene scoffed. Shannon, her bosoms aren't even big. They just look bigger because she's so damn short. Gary chuckled. I mean, I'm not complaining. Darlene scowled. Just fill the damn tank, Gary. While Darlene and Gary bickered in the car, Charlotte sat on the edge of her childhood bed, phone pressed to her ear as her father unleashed his fury. Since his stroke, John Eccles had abandoned any pretense of civility. Vulgarity had become his native tongue, and tonight he didn't hold back. Take a good look in the mirror, will you? John scoffed. You're built like a damn walrus, and that face of yours looks like somebody took a blowtorch to it and put the fire out with a rake. Charlotte flinched. Dad, you hit 40, so what? Women turn 40 every damn day, John snapped. But not all of them turn into complete morons just because of it. He jabbed a finger at the stack of legal documents sitting on the coffee table. Before Charlotte could respond, Samson, the only living creature in the house who didn't seem to despise her, strolled lazily into the room. And while you're at it, hire a damn lawyer. I need to clean out that cat's litter box, John muttered, cringing. God only knows what the hell that animal's been eating, but I swear to Christ, it smells like something died in there. He shoved himself away from the table, his left side drooping slightly, a thin thread of drool slipping from the corner of his mouth. Your room's still there, he grumbled, heading toward the kitchen. I hope it was worth it, you hear me? 40 years old and still as dumb as you were at 20. That night, Charlotte lay in her childhood bed, staring at the faded wallpaper she and her mother had picked out when she was 8. Samson curled up at her feet, completely unfazed by the mess her life had become. She sighed. Her 40th birthday week had started off so promising. The flight to Vegas had been smooth, the city lights breathtaking from the plane window. Excitement buzzed in her veins as she and Darlene checked into their hotel, then rushed downstairs to the roulette table. They giggled, placed a few small bets, and then decided to grab dinner. That's when everything unraveled. A handsome waiter returned to their table, expression unreadable. Ma'am, your card was declined, he said. Charlotte felt her stomach drop. She handed him another card. Declined. A third. By the time the restaurant manager personally returned her final card with a hard, unsympathetic stare, she was sweating. In a last desperate attempt, she pulled out her debit card and held her breath. Approved. Back in their hotel room, she pulled up her banking app and felt the blood drain from her face. Half of her money was gone. Both she and Darlene immediately blamed Ronnie. "He's gone too far this time," Darlene hissed. "Way too far," Charlotte agreed. Darlene, ever the optimist, tried to rally. "Come on, girl, we're in Vegas. Don't let that a-hole ruin this for us." But watching Darlene blow $300 in under an hour at the blackjack table didn't exactly lift Charlotte's spirits, especially because it was Charlotte's $300. She tried to have fun. She even picked up a handsome 25-year-old at a bar. They ended up in her hotel room. It lasted 4 minutes. And then, Charlotte turned her head just in time to see David Daltrey rummaging through her purse. She kicked him out before he could grab her wallet. Darlene, meanwhile, had soured completely. She raged about being stuck on a budget, whining that she was only allowed to spend $100 a day. Lady Luck hadn't smiled at her once. Then came Charlotte's actual birthday. Tuesday night, she tried again. Another young man, another flirtatious laugh, another glimmer of hope. Then he leaned in, smirked, and said, "Lady, if I wanted to sleep with a 300-pound woman, I'd be at home with my wife. But hey, I heard there's a blind convention 2 hotels over. Maybe you'll have better luck there, fat ass." Charlotte stood there, humiliated, as he walked away. She barely made it back to her room before the tears started. And of course, the Do Not Disturb sign was hanging from the doorknob. Darlene. Charlotte sighed and slumped into the hotel coffee shop. She sat there for 2 hours, stirring a black coffee she never drank. Finally, she texted Darlene that she was coming back. When she returned, the sign was gone. She showered, put on the hot lingerie she'd packed, and climbed into bed. And that's when it hit her. Ronnie hadn't called, not a text, not a voicemail, not even a sarcastic, "Happy birthday, 40-year-old hooker." Even Tracy had only sent a brief text. "Happy birthday, Mom." Ronnie? Nothing. Dennis, Brian, and Paul had sent her birthday wishes. But by morning, Darlene was already ranting about their tight budget. "I paid for the flight. I paid for the hotel," Darlene snapped. "And now we're broke because of you." By Saturday morning, Charlotte was done. She seriously considered cutting Darlene off completely. Blood relative or not, the woman was a parasite. But Darlene had both of their return tickets in her purse. So Charlotte kept her mouth shut. Now, lying in her old room, she let out a slow breath. Her big 4-0 had been a total, unforgivable disaster. Monday morning, Charlotte met with Jim Runkles, a no-nonsense attorney recommended by her boss at the library. Jim skimmed the paperwork from Penny Barnes's office, his face impassive. "He gets half, you get half. The house must be sold, and the profits, if there are any, will be split down the middle. Any remaining mortgage debt will also be split." Charlotte swallowed. "He's not asking for alimony," Jim continued, "even though he's currently unemployed." "But I don't want a divorce," Charlotte whined. "I don't want to lose my home." Jim sighed, rubbing his temple. "Mrs. Jackson, it doesn't matter what you want. If one person in a marriage wants a divorce, then guess what? They get a divorce." Charlotte perked up. "Can we request a consultation?" Jim raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Sure, I'll call Penny's office." Charlotte forced a smile as he made the call. But she barely listened. Instead, her eyes drifted over the titles on his bookshelf, tuning out the uh-huhs and hums. Jim hung up the phone and turned to Charlotte, folding his hands on the desk. "Here's the problem," he said. "Penny Barnes has no idea where her client is." Charlotte's stomach dropped. What?" Jim's expression remained steady. "Your husband came in, paid his fee, and left. The only contact information he provided was an email address." Charlotte's voice was barely above a whisper. "Does she need it?" "It's the only way she can reach him," Jim replied. "And no, she won't give it to us. Attorney-client privilege." Charlotte sank into the chair. "Oh." Jim sighed and glanced at his notes. "And one more thing. Ronnie told Miss Barnes that from now on your daughter can pay for her own tuition and dorm expenses." Charlotte's throat tightened. Jim frowned. He mentioned something about new traditions. Any idea what he meant? Charlotte's stomach churned. She shook her head. No. But she had a sinking feeling that Tracy did. Charlotte didn't celebrate her 41st birthday. She went about her morning as usual, dressed for work, grabbed her bag, and stopped by her father's chair to kiss his cheek. John didn't acknowledge her. He simply sat there, staring at his hands, which rested lifelessly in his lap. "You need anything before I head out?" she asked. "Nope," he muttered. She forced a smile. "All right then. You and Samson be good today." John scoffed. What the hell do you think we're gonna do? Charlotte didn't bother responding. She drove the same route she had every morning for the past year, from her father's house to the library. Her phone rang as she pulled into the parking lot, but she waited until she'd parked before checking the message. Happy birthday. Charlotte sighed. Yes, Tracy, happy birthday to me. I'm just overflowing with joy. Still, she typed a quick reply thanking her daughter. Since her disastrous 40th birthday, Charlotte had managed to lose 25 pounds. Not that anyone noticed. No one had paid much attention to her since Ronnie left. It had taken less than a week after his departure for her to realize the ugly truth about Darlene and Gary's open marriage. It wasn't some enlightened, progressive relationship. It was just two miserable people who didn't love each other. But neither could afford to live alone, so they simply coexisted in a cramped, aging trailer. No affection, no warmth, no passion. Charlotte thought back to Ronnie, the way he used to hug her from behind while she cooked, the way he'd steal kisses when she made him pork chops and mashed potatoes. She used to pull away, scrunching her nose. He smelled like sweat, like labor, like a man who worked hard. And then, when she had announced she was going to Vegas without him, he had simply stopped hugging her altogether. The last time she saw him, she had leaned in for a kiss. He had moved away. An hour after reading Tracy's text, Charlotte's phone buzzed again. Are you running late? She blinked at the message from her manager. Snapping out of her daze, she got out of the car and walked toward the back entrance of the cinder block building. Meanwhile, Tracy sat on her bed, rereading her mother's birthday text. Then she glanced at a second message, one that had arrived just minutes earlier. Attached was a photo of a tiny newborn baby girl with a full head of dark brown hair. Antoinette Barbara Jackson, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, 17 inches. The text came from her father's number. Tracy stared at the screen, stunned. Her baby sister was born on the same day as her mother. She let out a breathless, ironic chuckle. Oh, Mom's not going to like that. A thought crossed her mind. Did Dad even remember that today was her birthday? At carpets, tiles, hardwoods, and laminate flooring, a perky brunette at the front desk picked up the ringing phone. Shannon Parker, Becky McMahon's office. How can I help? She glanced up. Hey, Shorty, line 3. Ronnie, in the middle of helping a young couple pick out hardwood flooring, signaled for Bobby East to take over. He stepped away, crossing the bustling trading floor toward the flashing extension. He had been expecting a call from Samuel D., who was negotiating a major flooring contract with a new housing developer. As Ronnie picked up the phone, a very familiar voice greeted him. Well, you know what, Mr. Shorty? He froze. Shannon sounded downright giddy. Looks like you and your 7 inches managed to put another one in me. Ronnie nearly choked. Wait, what? She laughed. Yep, Tony isn't even out of diapers yet, and I'm already knocked up again. Ronnie ran a hand through his hair. Where are you right now? Just leaving Dr. Pruitt's office, she replied. Then get that gorgeous A of yours over here, he said. We're celebrating. Shannon giggled. I think all this attention on my A is what got us into this mess in the first place. She pushed Tony's stroller across the parking lot, stepping into the blistering Texas heat. At 4'8", she was used to feeling dwarfed by the world around her. But she loved this place. She tilted her head back, smiling into the sun. When Ronnie left town, he had stopped by the gas station one last time. Shannon had been leaning against the counter, sipping a Diet Coke. Where are you headed? She had asked, hopping off her milk crate. Ronnie smirked. Why do you want to know? So I can tell them where to forward my last paycheck. Ronnie raised an eyebrow. You going somewhere warm? Shannon continued. Because I've had enough of this damn snow. Ronnie chuckled. Shannon, what does a gorgeous girl like you want with an old man like me? She opened her mouth, ready to fire off her usual response. About 7 inches, but stopped. Instead, she studied him. All right, big guy. What color are my eyes? Ronnie didn't hesitate. Brown. Really dark brown. She nodded. I have a dimple. Which cheek? Left. She smiled. And when you grin, your right canine is a little crooked. Not bad, just not perfectly straight. Shannon's smirk softened into something real. Stepping out from behind the counter, she reached for his left hand. Hey, Paulie, she called toward the stockroom. A heavy-set man lumbered out. What? I'm leaving, she announced, grabbing her purse. Paulie frowned. But you still have 2 hours left on your shift. She coughed dramatically. Cough, cough, I feel sick. Bye. Without waiting for a response, she turned back to Ronnie, a grin spreading across her face. Hey, kid, she said. You ever been to Texas? Now, standing outside the Alliance Square Medical Center, Shannon whispered into her phone. Hey, Ronnie. His voice came through immediately. Yeah, babe. She hesitated for just a moment, then said softly, I love you. Across town, Ronnie smiled as the trading floor bustled around him. I love you too, Shorty. Charlotte sat at the kitchen table in her father's house, stirring a cup of lukewarm coffee, her thoughts a tangled mess of regret, resentment, and resignation. A year had passed since her 40th birthday disaster, and every time she looked at her reflection, she saw a woman she barely recognized, a woman who had thrown away everything without realizing its worth. Ronnie, on the other hand, had moved forward effortlessly. Word had reached her through Tracy. Her ex-husband had remarried. Shannon, the short brunette from the gas station, was now Mrs. Jackson, and they had a baby together. Another one on the way, too. The finality of it all stung more than she had expected. Tracy had come home for a weekend visit, bringing photos of her baby sister, Antoinette. Charlotte had stared at the pictures, at the tiny, dark-haired infant wrapped in a soft pink blanket, and felt something twist inside her chest. The fact that the baby shared her birthday was almost poetic. Ronnie had replaced her in every possible way. Charlotte sighed and reached for her phone, scrolling absently through old text messages. She hesitated for a moment before typing out a message to Ronnie. I'm sorry. She stared at the words for a long time. Then, with a deep breath, she deleted them. There was no point. Some things were beyond repair. Outside, her father coughed loudly in the living room, muttering curses at the television. The house smelled of old books, stale coffee, and forgotten dreams. Charlotte pushed away from the table, stood up, and went to clean Samson's litter box. It was the only thing left to take care of.